Hello everyone, dear friends. And I'm still the same person who watches Anime for you and tells you about it later in the videos. And today was hard for me. I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but just to say that the anime we are going to talk about in this video, let's just say that I could not get excited. Although it seems to be a fantasy with a cool hero, valiant actions, and other appropriate signs of exhaustion. However, in the end, something went wrong. And I'm talking about an anime called Spiritual Chronicles. But before we get to the other world, I want to ask you to do me two favors. The first is to like the video. The second is to subscribe to the channel. Sometimes memories from childhood can haunt you throughout your life. And those feelings that were in the early years and so can change a person for better or for worse. But do not forget that life also likes to present fatal surprises. That's what happened to the main character of our story named Haruto Amakawa. He died in a terrible accident and is now reborn as an orphan in the kingdom of Beltram. Interestingly enough, almost all of the boy's memories from the past have been erased or damaged, and his name in this world has been changed to Rio. From Danny, the poor guy exists in poverty and dire poverty around with people like him, who suddenly got a visit from a royal delegation headed by the daughter of King Christina Beltram and her subordinates, Protector Vanessa and friend Ruan and Biblican Goal and Claire, who saw the first protagonist. Approaching him, immediately asked if the boy saw a girl with purple hair nearby. It turns out that Flora's youngest daughter was stolen from the royal family, and the boys assume that the kidnapper took the victim here. But Rio knows nothing of this and openly swears that he has no information, and of course they do not believe him. Although a little later on Rio himself will realize what kind of situation he is really involved in. After all, back at the shelter, he saw in a bag the very same girl who is everywhere running around looking for. And the boy's eyes also caught the dead comrades who had died at the hands of a stranger killer. The man was about to attack the child as well. However, an unknown force inside the Rio in the person of a pink-haired beauty did not allow the assailant to cause any harm to the protagonist. And he easily coped with the man, disarmed him, and pulled out the Flora into the light, then returned it into good hands. However, instead of reward and encouragement, the poor boy was forced to go to the royal court for questioning. What if he too was involved in the kidnapping? And until all his innocence is confirmed, he will be treated appropriately. Although in reality behind the real actions is a much smarter man, hiding in the shadows, removing people who disappointed him. In fact, it is not difficult to suppose that much more ghastly royal intrigues will soon begin to take place. Nevertheless, it is too early to speculate about them, for Rio does not give a damn about the unjust world around him at the moment. He, after saving his important daughter and personally placing her under guard, is not only chained up but also beaten to the point of near unconsciousness. Fortunately, as soon as Flora woke up, she ordered that the boy who had saved her be immediately released. And of course, after the merry hours of beating, he also needed time to recover. But at least he had help with that. Seirei, and the one who seemed nice to Rio when we first met her, seems to be not a bad person in reality. At least, she's the only one who at least adequately communicates with and tries to build new connections for him in high society. Plus, since Flora, the rescued younger princess, confirmed the fact of Rio's valor, the boy was enrolled in the academy at the palace as a bonus, free of charge at the king's instruction. Here, surrounded by the wealthy of the Danish children, G will need to devote himself entirely to his studies. Fortunately, still from a past life ability to study hard in the head of Rio preserved. And in the wonderful company of Seirei, the main character is not even afraid of name-calling and other childish pranks. So what if he gets bullied? You can even just mute everyone and ignore all the ridiculous fools. And instead of fighting, it's nice to have a tea party and improve his knowledge of the magical world, where, by the way, before the rebirth Rio had a family with his loving mother, who was later killed right in front of him. And the boy clearly remembered the killer's face. So combining his studies with his desire for revenge, Rio intends to travel in the future after the end of his studies. Roughly, he wants to start with his native village, where his family came from. True, despite his desire to finish his studies at the academy, Rio is unfortunate from outside circumstances. Otherwise, he was going to be set up. And to return to the dungeon or to receive the death penalty at all, naturally does not want to. However, he shouldn't be upset about Rio's departure. Yes, he became a friend to Seirei during the time they spent together over a cup of tea. But the boy has matured considerably and has found the strength he needs to travel alone. And he's anxious to find out what happened to his local family. And it's time for him to get to the bottom of all the secrets. But of course, he was not allowed to leave the kingdom in peace. The important Gugenot family decided not to let the boy leave peacefully and put him under surveillance a girl from a race of beasts named Latifa. She is obliged to pursue the Rio and attack before him at the perfect moment. Though the girl seems not to have been warned what kind of man she will have to face, for at first the battle she really thought she had a chance of winning. And for her struggles, watch the funny game at the same time. Yes, it's funny that such a babe was seriously trying to hurt Geek, but it's sad that if it weren't for the orders from above and the collar forcing Latifa to do all sorts of nonsense, she'd be doing very different things. The girl is essentially in bondage, and he didn't get mad at her for attacking her. He only asked her not to attack him in the future and let her go. However, whether from the hopelessness or kindness of the protagonist, Latifa decided not to leave him, but on the contrary, together with him, go to the so-called spiritual forest, or simply put a place where spirits and beastly people live in peace and quiet. Anyway, the Rio is just down the road, so Latifa can stay under its protection for a while. Almost reaching his destination, however, the Grog had already gotten along with his partner, and one night he learned something new about her. While the girl was asleep, she pronounced the name of the city of Tokyo, which is where Rio was from in his previous life. And if he is not wrong in his assumptions, then Latifa, by some unknown coincidence, is also a Papadin. But so far, the talk of rebirth has not come up, because the guys right next to the spirit forest were attacked by the territory security team, who grabbed the guy on suspicion of kidnapping the girl's beast. And what was their surprise when they woke up a couple of hours later? Rio, the prison room, burst into a Latifa with a hug and demanded to release her man from the chains. That's when the elder of the spiritual village, Ursula, intervened in the conversation, apologizing for her girls and asking everyone to leave the heroes in peace, so that the next day in the company of all the heads of the settlement to discuss with Rio yesterday's unpleasantness. As the Rio report, almost all beastmen treat the human race with, shall we say, not much joy. Still, regular humans often kidnap beasts. And what other disgusting cases there are and remain in the shadows are literally millions of examples. But Rio is not like that. It is clear from his words that he is a decent person. And this is not empty flattery, not at all, for the dialogue of the elders is joined by the spiritual person of the great Orpheus tree, who announces to Rio that in addition to the special power in himself, he also has spirits in his heart, and perhaps Ji could already see it. Most of the questions, however, remain unanswered for the moment, and in order to get at least some of them answered, Rio decides to sit down in the spirit village for an indefinite period of time to rest. He wants to make a home here, but first and foremost he's going to show Latifa that this is the best home for her. At least the main character thinks so, however. Very soon, because of the interference of one nasty man, Rice Wolf, the spiritual village may face a terrible danger. You see, Rice is very intrigued by the inner strength of the spirit, and to see his powers, he wants to threaten the entire village, where he now rests, by bringing in an army of angry wyverns, led by a queen who is looking for her egg. And undoubtedly, Rice achieved his goal, for the Rio turned on the defensive and we witnessed his amazing capabilities. The guy took down the main wyvern without much trouble, defeating it with his bare hands, and that would be okay, we can relax. But it's time for the main character to leave, and that is why Latifa, who managed to get close to the guy, does not want to let him go, but there are no options. So before leaving, she reveals a part of her past, and it turns out that she got into this world after an accident on a bus, where Rio was also present. Well, with this knowledge packed for the road, the adventurer flew without stopping to the end point of the planned route. In the village where the parents of the protagonist had fled. Here the defining characteristic of a native is black hair, and Rio was immediately mistaken for one of their own, sending the traveler to the village manager of the Yuba grandmother, who shares kinship with Rio on his father's side. And the reunion of relatives is undoubtedly a significant event. First and foremost emotionally. And to stay in this place, of course, one wants to stay longer. Get acquainted with people, relax. And to meet the unexpected arrival of seemingly not honest visitors to the village. A group of peasants who had come to the settlement for a night and a broken cart immediately began to behave like barbarians. And such personalities were not to be ignored by Rio. So he acted as protector of the village, giving the girls his round-the-clock protection, and he was right. After all, the criminals tried to break into the room of the defenseless victims on the first night and were immediately destroyed in response by the hands of the slowly losing control over himself Rio. He, apparently in a fit of rage and flashback, didn't notice how he almost killed the man. Fortunately, he managed to stop, and for his active assistance in catching the villains, the guy was invited to the capital for a reward. Well, since the group has a couple of days in the city, why not try their luck? And don't invite Rio out for a walk after all the work. That's right, the main character is quite popular, not only among the guys as a great companion to rely on, but for the girls Rio looks like a truly handsome young man with respectable and cultured values. However, an unforeseen date with a girl named Sayu, whose eyes make it 100% clear what feelings she has for the main character, had to be sadly terminated. For Rio, while in the capital, managed to get an invitation to the royal palace on a serious matter. At the palace, the king and queen informed Rio of the origins of his mother, the dead princess. It turns out that Ji's maternal roots come from royal blood, and the motives for her murder by some adventurer pretending to be a friend make it more possible denouements in further investigation. And there is every chance that the girl's death was planned by someone. To find out, though, Rio can't stand by and wait. He must go on and wear without the drama of goodbye. On its own to leave the house in good health and again failed. And the culprit of the difficult departure is Seo, who confesses his love to his protector and all would be fine. But Rio cannot reciprocate her. He has a path of vengeance, and the samurai will never go out of his way for revenge. And as he walks off into the sunset, Rio decides to continue his search for the killer, not forgetting to visit the spirit village as well. The elders might have some useful gifts in store for them. Yes, and the integrity of the Latifa can have time to check whether she's alright, and similar everyday problems. Nevertheless, instead of the peace and tranquility of the village of the Beastmen, Rio received opposite a portion of deliciously nervous sleep together with some girl in bed. It is ironic that a stranger's seemingly first night together is in fact not the first encounter. Even as a child, this pink-haired goddess saved him in battle with the kidnapper of the king's daughter back then. And to this day she has guarded the boy and slept inside his soul. And she was given a name similar to that of another girl from Mezer's past life, Asia, which is so strangely reminiscent of the identity of a classmate of Naharu Ayasa's. And according to Orphe's analysis, Asia, like her, came from a lineage of spirits. And since this is the case, Orphe suggested that she should immediately be tested for her fighting ability. And it turns out that Asia is in no way inferior to Rio. So the decision is made to work together with her, since in any case Rio could use an assistant with the same incredible strength. And after sorting out all the formalities and leaving the spiritual village again acquired crafts elders for more comfortable travel in disguise, the protagonist, before continuing his vengeful adventures, last wanted to stop by a long time, partly the first friend in this world, Sally's teacher, who seems to be getting married, and her marriage has to do, as Mr. G guesses, not with her love feelings for a man named Charles Arba, previously familiar to us from the interrogation scene. Certainly the target has an unrequited relationship in her eyes, but she is not in a position to reject it either. Otherwise, the position of the Beltrump's main royal family, which is in tune with Claire, will be shaken even more. And the family ties of the Arbors could save the whole situation. So the forthcoming wedding is just a tool to improve one's position. And Sala is just a puppet in this game, with no choice in the matter. And what about the additional intrigue of Rice, sticking his curious nose into everything he can? He too has his filthy hands on the soon-to-be fest. But will he go according to plan? And will Ro allow a loveless wedding? Well, the answer to that question was G's abrupt burst into the wedding ceremony. And without unnecessary loss of time, having clarified with the bride whether she was ready to run away from here to the other side of the world, Rio, having lifted the former teacher in his arms, rushed to meet with Asia, who handed the so-called doll saved from marriage and himself, in order to distract the attention of the guards, returned back to the capital, where he stood up to the battle with the army general Alfred, and made him look like a loser, although in reality, the protagonist, taking advantage of the turmoil, escaped to a safe place and started a new life from here. In the continuation of which will happen some kind of explosive creature events, from the awakening of the heroes to the meeting of Rio with other people from Japan, and even his first sweetheart. All in all, the second part of the anime should make for an intriguing story. The end of the first season, and a few words lastly, and rather, not about the work itself, but just about its future development. As I found out, in the sequel to the anime there really will be a lot more interesting things to do with the other reborn people. And if you think about it, the second season in the anime could really build on a strong base of appealing characters. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that I didn't like the first season of the anime at all. It was literally hard to watch. That said, I can't single out anything specifically bad. On the contrary, the story is so average, and it affected me personally could not do anything. The main character looks and acts like an ordinary main character. Is there a harem in the anime? Is there? Or something like that. Is the villain the Brit and other weirdos acting like genius overactors and everything and everyone in place? Yeah, the same rice. So I can say about the whole anime. And thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Bye bye.